we are, thank you very much, JJ and Lydia. So we're going to transition into esports in the high school setting and looking at some of the evolution of teams, building teams at the high school level, challenges at the high school level as well. So we have two builders really of esports within that high school space. We have Drew Betts. He's the athletic director at Salem Academy Charter School. Welcome, Drew. And we have Kelly Corrigan, programming and web development teacher, gaming at Shawsheen Valley Regional Vocational Technical School. So welcome, Drew and Kelly. I think we'll have Kelly start us off, if you don't mind, Drew, and love to hear your story and the good work that you're doing.
Sure. Hi, everybody. This is fantastic. I am a teacher, right? So I have taught, I can't believe I'm in my 31st year of teaching, and it seems crazy. But for 18 and a half of those years, I was at Boston Public Schools, and I was really in the heart of the city. And I was at one particular school where the attendance rate was, it went between like 36 to 42% was the attendance rate. So that was an issue. So in what I had done is I had started writing a grant for multimedia and communications. And what I did was I started building gaming into it. And I brought in like gaming consoles that I no longer used, and people donated them. And I started this part of the program where you could come in and play the games before school. Okay, so this is where the attendance comment comes in, ties in. My group, and I'm bragging here, had 95% attendance rate. It's because they got to play video games if they came into school. And if they didn't come in, they didn't get to play. And if they came in late, they didn't get to play. So we did really well with that. And then I got offered a position at Shawsheen Tech, and they're a vocational school. And they have, so I'm in the computer technology program. So my part of it is I teach programming and web development, and I always teach programming by way of making video games. And most of what I had planned on saying has actually already been said, because on the high school level, you know, you have to have administration on board. You have to have, you know, it's got to look good for the school. And parents have to know what's going on, right? Because we have all the kids that want esports. So I knew that, you know, Play Versus was coming out with this full esports league, which I have no idea how many people in this are high school people or not. But for the high school level, when Massachusetts first offered a varsity level team, it was through Play Versus, and it was League of Legends, and it was called Season 0. So fortunately, I had, like, you know, this fantastic superintendent, Tim Broderick, who he came up to me. He's like, listen, this came up at our superintendent meeting. I don't know anything about it, but I know it's your thing. You want to take it? And I was like, absolutely. So I'd already started a video game club, which, like, kids just come in droves. Like, it's amazing the swarm of kids that love to play video games. So I got to reach out to, you know, Play Versus, and we started with 7 players playing League of Legends. And then we added on, as they added on, we added on, and now we're up to about 75 kids that are playing. So that makes it sound very neat and cut and dry. But what I want to say is, because I mean, the challenges were not getting the kids in. The challenges were making sure administration, all of administration, including the principal, understood why we would do this. Right? Because there's a, you know, for a long time, there's a real negative connotation for kids constantly playing video games, down in the basement playing video games. So it wasn't just, you know, and it's always financial with schools and probably everywhere. And, you know, coming up with a gaming lab is cheaper than coming up with, you know, a new field. And I use that line a lot. But also I had to kind of educate administration on what we were doing and why we were doing it. And then at the same time, reach out to parents of kids so that they understood what was going on. And I would explain to them League of Legends. I don't know if anybody in here plays League of Legends, but this is not an easy game to play. And I liken it to chess, right? Like, you have 5 characters that are all different playing against another set of 5 characters, and they all have different powers and abilities. and they go into an arena and they have to win over a map. So your critical thinking skills need to be, right on, and you need to be able to, the team that's going to win is the team that thinks as a team as many steps ahead as possible. That's the team that wins. And that is the same theory that chess, that you need to win in chess. And when you apply that and then you explain that to parents, they go, oh, okay, critical thinking, great. And then you throw in the fact that there are scholarships, and now there's even more. That was 4 years ago. Now there are so many scholarships all across the country. There's 150 schools that I know of that offer scholarships, and we have 3 kids that are actually on scholarship right now. So I have, I did make a PowerPoint, but it kind of covered a lot of what was already said and things we know. So, and I don't want to take up too much more time, but I want to highlight one other really important thing, is that I talked about, like administration, I talked about parents, but then you talk about, you got to really look at the kids like, okay, hold on. When I was working in Boston and those kids didn't have access to gaming at home, they were coming into school on time despite whatever to be there. But now I'm at Shawsheen Tech, and these kids have that stuff at home. Why are they going to want to come in? What will make it better for them if then sitting at home in their own space? They're used to sitting at home in their own space. They're okay with it. They have been. And then when you start with something like a gaming club and you look at the psychology behind, okay, yeah, I'm not the best League of Legends player ever and never will be. However, I'm very good at matching kids up and getting conversations going that, pull people into the conversation. And doing that in video game clubs started to build the dialogue we wanted to have, to start really building the hype for having our esports teams. And with that, reaching out to companies like Gamer Sensei, who they have, really affordable online coaching that, we did a fundraiser and they helped out with that. They ended up getting bought by Corsair, who's now like a partner with us. So, and they're still Gamer Sensei. So they still do the same thing. They're just owned by a bigger company. So there's a lot that goes into getting this off the ground and running before you even get into how you play better. So high school has the same kind of ingredients, but you really have to go about it in a way where you kind of address where each of those groups are coming from, and they're coming from 3 different places. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I love your analogy with, an esports lab is similar to building a new field. Can you just speak to a little bit about the budgeting aspects and challenges you're dealing with? Absolutely.
We lucked out in that because we are a vocational school. One of the projects that we do is I build in a lot of the like the specs of building a lab. We did it as a project with the students, right? So when we went to the administration, we showed them what we could do and we could build these, which we ended up getting, you can work with companies and get great deals. So, but it tied in with academics and it ties in with management, and the kids love it because they're building a gaming PC, right? So when I talked with and this was tricky at first, because when I talked with administration about getting a gaming lab, again, the psychology behind it had to be, it's not just esports that's going to benefit from this. We have a whole shop that's going to benefit from it. We're programming, but every school could benefit from having a gaming lab, right? Like we could all think of many reasons why that's an important thing in this day and age. And then, you have to, once you get there, like I did it for 2 years without getting paid because I already knew what was going to happen. And I'm not saying anybody else should do that because we might be beyond that point now, but then the school now pays me well for it to be the esports coordinator. So the budget, like I also knew enough to know that it wouldn't be fair to say, hey, pay me X amount and I'll build this esports, program that I think you're really going to like. And I think the kids are going to like, and I think it'll help bring kids into the school. I mean, that's not really how schools run. They're always running behind budget. So I knew, all right, if I build this this year, when I see kids coming in left and right, I mean, and they were, I mean, it's a real fun program. And our lab, I use the fact that, I gave countless examples of why a good solid lab is so important in our school. So, and part of that was esports, right? Like, we have good labs, but in our shop in particular, but part of it was esports. I knew that I had to pull other things in. Well, then now we just got a second gaming lab, and that's brand new. So now we have 2 gaming labs, and with our connection with Corsair, we have awesome Corsair gaming chairs, and we just got 50 sets of Corsair headsets, gaming mice, keyboards, and in exchange for, like, 2 tweets a week during the season that has them in it, which we tweeted anyways. So it's the budget, really, you have to be careful with that. You have to kind of know how to use your words to make sure that the school sees it. Now I could probably say, and we did, oh, we're going to need a new lab for esports coming up within, like every 3 or 4 years, we're really going to need to upgrade. And if the program is bringing in 75 kids, then okay, great, then that's a fair thing to request, and then say, oh, we could also use it for this and this, and but it wasn't the driving thing at first, because I had to understand the psychology of where administration is, where where the money for the school is, and you got to get, like I said, getting administration and parents on board is key. Kids are there, they love it, they already. I guess the biggest challenge with them, which I know that one of the things was to original challenges is knowing that, right now, League of Legends, Rocket League, 2K, these are all hot games. That will change. So we have to build a sound program that can change. And like you said, we don't own the games. So that hasn't settled yet. So once that happens, things might be different, but it will always take some understanding of how to make sure that people understand, people that don't play video games understand why this is important to keep, which will get easier because now there's more and more scholarship money.
So Kelly, for the esports lab during the day, as an example, are there classes being taught in that lab that are related to gaming and esports?
Yeah, so I actually teach there all day, and it is heaven. It's so great being this far in my career to have this, wonderful thing that is so fun to do and be part of. And yeah, we teach, so we use Unity and Unreal, both of which I've reached out to, because you can get the software for free, but you get a lot of extra stuff, and they love it when they hear schools are doing this kind of things. And I'll send them, samples of our games and things kids are doing or whatever. I want them to know who we are. And once our kids get better and they start to, follow along with this. So they do that, and they also do a lot of networking, and we also do like ethical hacking and cybersecurity. And we relate a lot of it to gaming. Once they get into 11th grade, at the end of 11th grade, they can select which track they want to focus on. One of those tracks is gaming. They come in 9th grade, everybody wants gaming. And then they see, like, okay, well, you got to have your product secure. We got to have, we do a lot with, like, what's right and wrong. Well, let's find what's right with this. Let's find what's wrong with this. And, let's look at this as a business. And so we, like I said, cybersecurity and that sort of thing. And in fact, we do this one activity where, they make a game, and it's a very basic game. It's at the beginning, and, and I say, okay, so now you're going to get the grade for the person sitting next to you with their computer. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So you understand the fact that you don't want someone else taking credit for your work. And honestly, it's one of the only times that they work on their own. Like, they work in teams all the time, but it's really important that they understand the impact of that, so, so it's fun and it's exciting. But it is definitely challenging, for sure. You gotta be a little amped up about it. You gotta have somebody that's amped up about it that, enjoys learning about this stuff. I'm lucky that I do. My father was into technology, so that got me into that. And it just, there's always something exciting right around the bend, and you just want to always keep peeking around the corner there and say, oh, I want to be the first one with that. And I feel like with esports now, everybody here, like, we have this opportunity to be part of this. Like, we're no longer at the 0.0 version of esports, right? We're at like, 0.1 maybe, right? We're past the very beginning. And this is only getting bigger because it already has the player base across the globe. So it's a matter of how we figure it out in the meantime. And all of these, programs in colleges are just going to explode. And I don't know, it's great. Any questions? I think, I don't know.
Yeah, there is a question. What kinds of outcomes do your students have relating to graduation, or going on to college,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
or
So,
getting out of high school?
okay, so we have 3 kids on full scholarships, and they're all, 2 of them are studying game development at Clark, which used to be Becker's program. Becker's been amazing. We've worked with them a lot. And we have kids that, they're all heading, well, a third of them actually are heading to college. They all start off planning, maybe they're going to go to college. We have a number of kids that we have co-ops. So I'm going to give you an example for one kid who got a job and his plan was to go to college, but at the job, he started writing programs to help the other techs there, to, like, when questions were asked, things to fix. And he even made a game out of one of them. And he is now making $82,000 a year. He's going to wait and go to college later, he said. So we've had a lot of positive outcomes. We haven't had a ton of kids that have ended up like completely in the game development field. We're getting there. We need to find more internships for them, like with our co-ops. We need more co-op jobs for them in the industry, and that's been tricky to find. But as far as lots of other successes, as far as oh, here's an example. So we do some internships with IBM, and they reached out. They were like, hey, this is great. We didn't realize that your kids were learning Unity, and we use Unity. And apparently a lot of them didn't know how to use Unity. They knew how to program in C#, but they didn't know Unity. And our guys came in there like whizzes, making a game out of everything. So, see any other questions?
That's great, Kelly.
Thanks.
I think we can ask if we can just go to Drew Betts, if you would like to kind of share your experience at the Salem Academy Charter School, and then we'll monitor the chat for both of you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Tilly, for having me. Kelly, if you ever feel like coming to Salem, we would love to have you. Our sort of story, I would say, is very, very different. As someone, obviously, I've just never been a traditional gamer. But all of a sudden, when sort of COVID occurred and all of our students were in a remote setting, it was something that I tried to start to explore, like, how do we engage our students to essentially keep them coming to school even in a remote setting? So we ended up starting to set up sort of like head-to-head video games where it was like kids would play against each other in a 2K setting or FIFA, just something to make sure that they were doing something on a daily basis. And from there, that was when I started to get a chance to just explore working with different organizations and companies. So you'll obviously get a chance to hear from a little bit later, but we as a school started to work with Vanta Leads, which you're going to hear from, or Vanta, sorry. You'll get to hear from in a little bit later. And I actually will jumped on a webinar that Dr. Gentili ran earlier, and where I got to meet Jim, and it kind of went from there. But similar to Kelly's kind of comparison, just working in schools, the biggest challenges for us were just around funding. It's been a lot easier to sort of get funding, since our school is considered to be, our big mission is about college prep and college readiness. So 100% of our students go on to college. And as this is becoming a bigger and bigger industry, this is a direction in which we've had students go on, and they're continuing to, or they didn't necessarily play on an esports team here with our school, but are joining esports teams. We've had a student up at UMass Lowell that won like a $20,000 tournament And that's kind of just been that nice little piece where we're continuing to engage our alumni. And they're the ones that are sort of presenting the future of different opportunities for our current students. This is the first year we're going to be able to launch like true teams. So we'll have 2 high school teams. We'll have a Rocket League team and a League of Legends team. And the same will be true at the middle school level as well, because we're a 6th to 12th grade school. So similar to like Kelly said, our challenges is around funding. So that's something that we've started to work with, and we're starting to create a game design class. So that way, again, it's an easier sell to our administration just around futures for our students. Other challenges that we've had just based off our school's demographics is we do experience some challenge with just equipment. So we as a school have a very, very small computer lab. So we've worked on a bunch of different grants just to make sure that students have the technology needed to be able to compete. And then working with Vanta Leagues, it's been beneficial because it's also been, from a cost standpoint, we're able to essentially hire a staff member to be in the room, and they will be the ones providing the coaching. So that's something that, again, I think if we were to have a staff member such as Kelly that would be interested in doing it, it would be something that we would be able to do a little bit more. But if I'm being totally honest, the person that we have in the building is kind of our tech director. They have no experience from a gaming standpoint. So that's where it's kind of a benefit for us to be able to have an organization to provide that coaching. But yeah, so those are really our reasons why and how. And from there, it's turned into kind of like a bigger piece. So now we this fall have 2 different video game nights, which is just something that's just going to be like within our school. And that's something that different athletic teams are actually going to use as like a fundraiser to sort of support this group. So it's like we'll end up charging students, I think, $3 to attend. They'll be able to buy food, and that money is going to sort of go to different things that we will need to continue to help sort of build this program, because I would say we're really in year like 2.5 of it. And we do have, kind of like a 5-year plan as we continue to push this forward. But we do have a lot of work to get there.
Thanks, Drew. Now your undergraduate degree is in sport management. And so now you find yourself as an athletic director that now is looking to support esports. Can you just kind of talk about how the links that you made from your academic prep to this field?
Yeah. So in terms of, I think of one of my first ever classes in college with you about Oregon Ed. And it's like we had to create our own school. And this is very much a lot of the same skills that we developed in that, or that you taught me in that class, because it's around like, how do you create this program? Where are you getting the money? Where are you doing the scheduling? Where is the location in which these student athletes are competing? And so that was something that it was a direct translation for me. And I think we look at this very much. I saw a question earlier in the chat. We look at it very much the same. Like, our student athletes are held to the same standard. We have the same grade checks. We don't charge a user fee to participate, but it's like if students are purchasing team shirts, they would purchase the team shirt the same way that our boys and girls soccer programs would. So the skills that I would say going back to that Oregon Ed class, my freshman year of college is, where I feel like that has translated, and also just the ability to kind of work on things where it's like, if you put me in front of a game, like, I haven't played a video game since Sega Genesis. So like it's the concept of being able to at least schedule, organize, prepare. And so that's, I would say, my credit to you.
Well, I guess one of the things that we're really trying to kind of put our hands on is just the transferability of how we're teaching in sport management and in athletic administration, and how, the next progression could be, in esports, and understanding the challenges that are happening across diverse settings. And in particular, your high school students are being exposed to esports and gaming at a higher level than perhaps our current students have been, right? So we're going to have a group of let's say freshmen or sophomores or freshmen in 2 years, let's say, who are really smart and esports savvy, more so than we might be. So it's just staying current is important. There was a question here about ensuring sustainability and growth and what is like the teacher admin turnover within esports / gaming?
I could maybe take that one if that's okay with you, Drew. So like I said, I kind of went at this, and I've been teaching a long time, so I knew what I was doing, right? Like, so I knew I had to build it a little bit. The key to it surviving is really talking a ton with the kids, knowing what games are coming up, because I'm talking with them. I know what they want. If that's the buzz, you create the buzz. Like, you let it be whatever they're all excited about, whatever the game is. Like, honestly, I never would have predicted that Smash Ultimate would have been a game that anybody would want to compete in, and they love it, right? So that is so important. The other thing, and what that does is that gets them talking to the parents. The second part is that, like when I said talking to the parents, I don't know if I mentioned that, like, on game days, I would text all the parents or email them, whatever their form of communication was, and say, hey, come on in, we're going to be serving hot dogs. And honestly, like, the first time we did it, I was bringing my Instant Pot in and cooking like 20 hot dogs in 4 minutes. And like, it became this thing where parents, I compared it. I'm like, you played football in high school. Well, this is the same kind of thing, only it's, this is the sport they're playing. So my point in saying that this helps the longevity is that people are talking about it. And honestly, in public schools, they listen to that, and parents get a lot, like, they have a lot of say in what's going on. And so long as you kind of know what you're talking about, like, you go back to the, false information that's out there, I can say to parents, yes, there's scholarships, and these 3 kids are on them. We've already had success with that. And, yes, this is growing, or yes, this is the game. In fact, I've had some parents say, oh, some of the games that are coming up for next year are a little bit violent. What do you think? So number one, I have a good communication with them so that they're already comfortable enough to send me these questions. And that's really important. And I send them back a list of why. And the reason is because there's scholarship money. This is what it is. And this is how we're going to go about trying to, every kid that plays is going to have, a parent's going to have to sign off on anything. We use a rule where we say any game that shoots a human, which we try to stay away from that. But if they're getting scholarship money for it and their parent is okay with it, we're going to go that direction, What is
There was a question about typical range for scholarships.
Well, I have had 3 kids that got a full scholarship. But you can get, it's just like any other scholarship, there's different, like $1,000 a year, $6,000, but these 3 did really well. They did really well academically as well. And they jumped into the esports management program that they had. So that was great. And we had actually, that's the other thing, is like going to places around you and finding out, like a lot of schools are putting in new labs, gaming labs. So if you're aware of that, then like you can say, oh, can we bring some kids over there? Then they get to know you, they get to know the students, the kids are at home talking about it, administration loves that you're doing it. Like, it really is that whole approach that, like, other coaches don't have to do, right? Like, football doesn't have to do that part, because everybody knows what football is, and they already know what it's a great thing. And so there's parts of, like, building this where you kind of have to have, as the person running the program, you have to have that mentality, like, well, we're a little bit of a pioneer here, right? This is probably going to stay here. We're going to have esports probably forever. It's just a matter of figuring out how we do it correctly. I hope that answered the question.
It did.
Good.
I guess I had a question about territory, and I know, Drew, you're going to add to this in terms of, like, are you in academics? I know you are, but in terms of the budget now, is it just shared between athletics and academics and student life?
So from a financial standpoint, we run our extracurriculars in under one budget. Right now I actually manage all our extracurriculars. So kind of just, you're able to, obviously, which is a benefit in the way we're able to allocate a certain amount of resources to that. Obviously, ideally, just probably like everybody else or anybody else, you would want that number to be a bigger number. But it at least allows a little bit of control for that. And then the other thing too that I would add that Kelly was talking about in terms of sustainability, the best thing is, as parents, everybody's able to, whether they're watching this in person or just watching it on their phone or computer at home, like since everything is streamed live, it's incredibly beneficial. And we get that with other sports as well. Like if a basketball game's not streamed, it's almost like this massive shock to the world. So in terms of esports, since it does have an almost easier availability to that, you know, grandma or grandpa that live in California can watch this as easily as if they're right down the road here in Salem. So it just makes it super accessible to anyone. And that also, in terms of like a cost for your other sports, you're typically, whether it's purchasing a huddle cam or a NFHS network, something that's thousands and thousands of dollars. These games are traditionally able to be streamed for free.
Yeah, good point.
Is there a particular platform you use to communicate with your students? Are you using Discord?
So for us, in terms of like the streaming, that's something that we do through Bonta. In terms of like, it'll be done through Twitch. In terms of like the communication piece, we're just switching over to a new extracurriculars website that'll be done. But right now our coaches use apps as a communication device so that way parent and guardians are able to see it. When we switch over to this new website, it'll essentially just allow folks to sign up for updates. So that way, if you're on an esports team, it's like you'll get a text message every morning, like practice from this time to this time, as just a reminder. Obviously, just with any other calendar or activity scheduler, you'll be able to see that at any point. But our big switch, just a lot of times since folks feel like they're inundated with emails, is just to make sure that way it's coming to you as a text, and as a parent as well, you would get that same message if you signed up for the alerts, that it's like, you know, practice today is from 3:30 to 4:30 in this room. Or if for some reason it changes, any changes, cancellations, things like that will all go out in that same way.
Yeah, we use Discord for the most part, but we started developing, as part of the shop, we developed Power Apps with Microsoft. And one of the ones that the kids were working on for this year is just to use Power Apps for all esports. So that, you know, same exact reason.
Well, it sounds like, Kelly, if you need something, your students are going to develop it.
They're awesome. They're amazing.
So there was a question, does exposure to and involvement in esports help the high school student broaden their horizons nationally and internationally?
They're really good. They could essentially, you know, rank and, you know, they could get noticed.
I would echo that. And I think that's just something that, in terms of like from at least within our school league, we're playing pretty much within our conference. So you're getting recognized a little bit more like locally. But just by having the ability to play on different platforms and different games, you're talking about an international network.
So can you speak to how the staff in the building feels about esports?
They were really supportive. I mean, at first it was like we had people out in the hall, like we had so many kids at first that were getting part of, like, it was like, that's when we knew we had to separate, you know, video game club from esports. Like they needed to be two separate things. And, you know, like staff was a little bit like, what? Like, what's going on? But again, it's just letting people know, you know, like this is what's going on. And, you know, there's videos and stuff. Like we were part of Play Versus did this video, an intro video, and it's got like 150,000 hits. And so that was great because we could actually share that like with, you know, school committee, you know, and people could see it. But we really can't expect, and I knew this going into it, like you can't expect that, you know, everybody there is going to understand esports. You know, I mean, a lot of people just don't. They're not into video games. They don't see it as what it actually is. And so they kind of think, well, you know, like I said, there had been a negative connotation of kids playing games in the basement, and, you know, so it's just talking about it and letting people know what the story is.
I'd echo that. I'd say we're like a total split crowd. some folks saying this is great, some that are kind of mixed reviews on it, just because a lot of times our students are on Chromebooks and stuff like that a lot throughout the day. So there is that concept that it's like, how much is too much? But I would say we're very much split down the middle in the way. We also have, a number of staff members that are also that enjoy gaming themselves.
So are you finding, Kelly and Drew, that students who are participating, on these clubs and the teams, are they going into fields like even sport management, or are they mostly going into like the programming side of things?
A few of them are going into esports management. One of the things that we really talk a lot about, and this is true, is that, yes, if you really want to end up in this field, then, arm yourself with enough tools that, you offer more than anyone else going for the job. So if you know how to program and you know how to make a game and you've made a game and you have a portfolio that shows this, so there's a lot of things you can do, and you can. So we have a lot of kids going into computer science, but they plan on heading into gaming later on.
I would agree with that. A lot more has been around like game design, computer science, and again, we're a little bit newer to this, so I don't think we would have a big enough like sample size of where the students are going. But the vast majority that have been participating have done computer science or game design. We've had a lot of students go towards sports management, but just what I would probably consider the more traditional group.
In terms of the students on your campuses, are you providing like in-person events that they could attend, or is it only through streaming?
You mean like our game? We're all in person. We barely went, even during the pandemic we were in. And so it was awesome when everybody had to be in for esports, right? That was great. It was a real celebration every time. And then, when it went to a hybrid model because of COVID, I do feel like I'm heading back in. I'm gonna have to rebuild a lot, but clearly it's worth it. And but it's we do offer a lot of events. We also offer like younger kids, like 7th graders come in, and we have our kids come in and work with them. And we always do what we call it a game slam. And it's basically they organize a game tournament and they have to go through and figure it out. They make an app for it and everybody signs up and picks the game they want. And then they make the brackets and, that sort of thing. So we bring in, younger kids for them too.
Yeah, ours is now also all in person, but we just also offer like the streaming option. So it'll be like traditional game days. I think for us this fall, it'll be like League of Legends has their game day on Tuesday, Rocket League on Thursday. I will say, just based off our space, the students are all in person. If there was a parent or guardian that would want to attend, they're welcome to in person. But just the space in which they're playing it's a traditional classroom. So we could fit a few folks, but it wouldn't have the ability to have more than probably 15 spectators.
I have a question. And Kelly, you mentioned that you certainly talk quite a bit to the students in terms of what's going on, but is there an organization or a research or a website or a blog or an in particular person podcast that puts out things that you're going to and reading and tuning in for to keep you like abreast of what's happening within the industry in general?
Well, I do have the kids always researching better leagues, right? That's what we do, because we want to make sure we're in the best stuff, right? And I always research it too. So for example, we've gone with Play Versus because Massachusetts recognizes them as a varsity sport, but we're also going with High School Esports League, which offers a lot more games. And so I've talked with them a few times, and I usually try to go to a couple of different seminars each year to make sure that I'm kind of staying current. But really and truly, a lot of the stuff I get to is from Unity and Unreal to see where they're going with their games, because obviously they're right, they get their finger on the pulse of it all because that's their business. But I know High School Esports League a few years ago, I wasn't so impressed with it. And now they've come out with an amazing amazing curriculum, actually. We actually purchased it. So it's not just for esports, but it's also, it involves like a psychological component, which actually, if anybody is in high school and is looking for this kind of thing, that piece alone really like qualifies you for like, or probably would qualify you for like that Perkins grant. I'm sure you all know about that. There's a lot of money there, and that they love seeing that, and then you can work it within the right time frame. But yeah, I do that, and I just I look online and I follow up on different. I think of what really Unity and Unreal give me a lot of information as to where things are going. Oh, and actually colleges too. So I'll follow where the colleges are playing, what leagues they're in, and what they're doing. So.
I would definitely, this is Jim from Vanta. I would add to that as well. I often, I follow a lot of the venture capitalists in the space too, because they're often very much on a lot of the different trends in terms of, you know, not just the games themselves and the publishers, but, you know, M&A activity, you know, the latest trends and stuff like that. So I'll drop a couple links in the chat here that I think have certainly been helpful for us. And Kelly's breaking my heart by mentioning Play versus High School Esports League, and those are big competitors of ours, but doing great things certainly. But we have to have a chat, Kelly.
We have to go with them because they have Massachusetts varsity sports.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time.
So actually, Jim will be speaking with us at 11:30, but he's the founder of Vanta Sports, and Drew is working with the company. So we'll circle back in a few minutes. I mean, you know, Kelly and Drew, you're in the high school space, and most of us are in the college space, you know, and in the classroom. But we need to know what is happening at the high school level. Because our students also might be working in that space eventually, or interning in that space, but also, like I said, those are the students that we're basically recruiting for our own programs. So, you know, I feel like we really need to be educated on the projects that you're doing in your own classroom, Kelly, and Drew, some of the, you know, the leagues that you're involved with and how you're managing, you know, all of the sports as an athletic administrator. Not just, you know, the traditional sports, but now you're managing esports under that umbrella as well. I just had another question for Drew in terms of that philosophy of athletic administration. Like, how do you kind of reinforce those ideals across traditional sports and esports? And do we have to keep saying traditional sports and esports still?
Great question. I mean, I would say I'm probably at fault of doing that just because it's almost newer to me as well. But I think when I first met with Jim, it was the concept that they kind of spoke about were things that you would pitch for any type of activity that you're getting involved with. So it's like, it's around commitment, it's around teamwork, it's around engagement within your community. So all of those things kind of like really struck for us. So it's like, I know that's where it's a little bit tricky in the way of like, so we don't enter our esports team in your traditional MIA leagues. So it's like, we almost just run it as a conference itself. But that's where, like I said, it really stuck out to me because of like the coaching that was being provided. That would be the same thing that you'd be looking for in your soccer or football or basketball coach. So it's definitely, I'll say, unique to navigate. As also someone that, you know, gaming was not something that drew me by any means. But the way I just view my role is, it's like, how do you engage the most students in your community? And at this point, you know, prior to the pandemic, we were at probably about 75% of our students were engaged in at least one extracurricular. By expanding this, now that we're back in a full, true traditional year, our hope is to get a little bit closer to 90%. And it just, this creates a platform that is, you know, we're, like I said, if our goal is to engage 90% of our students and we're just under 500 students, 6 through 12, this is an avenue that's really, really important to be able to hit that number.
I mean, I would like to add that the pandemic, you know, and our students being off campus or in lockdown, I think one of the connectors was esports and gaming that kept a lot of our students connected whether it be just socializing and conversation or playing. It was their way to remain kind of positive in a dark time. And we actually had a sport management student who I connected with Mass Youth Soccer, our youth soccer association, and they wanted to try to keep in touch with the soccer players when they could no longer play. And so he developed a whole FIFA bracket for them and logo, and it's still going on. So it'll be the third year that they'll be doing that. But it's just the creativity also that has exploded because of esports during the pandemic. So I always kind of go back to, that's such a positive thing. Like, what if we didn't have gaming at that time? And we're obviously dealing with a lot of mental health issues, but I have to say, I think a lot of young people were saved because of the gaming industry. Okay, any other questions for Kelly and Drew? We still have a little bit more time with them. Kelly, what do you do for some professional development to keep yourself kind of, current in the trends?
So I've been working a lot with like Gamer Sensei and just talking with them. And I have worked in, I try to stay in the field somewhere. So I am usually working on some project somewhere, and then I connect with other people, and that's basically what I do. And I also just follow up. I'm just constantly making connections, and like there's a few of you in here that I'm definitely going to be following up with. But that really, I see that as my job, like understanding where everything is, because I like to play video games, but I don't live for it. And my whole goal is just offering whatever is going on right now, and it's all online. It's all, whatever I'm reading. Oftentimes there's something like the New York Times actually covers it pretty good, in ESPN. And then I usually try to, like, for example, this summer, I took a course on developing video games in virtual reality, for like in mixed reality, which was great, in Unity. So, just something a little bit more to offer the kids when I go back, kind of thing. Because I do think there's going to be a platform there's going to be esports that's in mixed reality pretty soon, virtual reality pretty soon.
And Drew, what are some of the things that you're doing just to kind of educate yourself in this industry?
For myself, honestly, it's just like, it's learning it. So it's kind of like, when I say like learning, what does the schedule look like? For me, that is something that is just like, how many people do you need on a Rocket League team? How many people do you need on a League of Legends team? So it's a lot of just kind of more conversations around that. And then the second piece for us that we're just as we're new to it, and Kelly kind of, I thought, did a nice job addressing it, is any sort of like first person shooter games. Presently, that's not anything that we offer. And that's where, at least as I know, that is probably the group of games that is the most popular for many of our students. But that is just something that is kind of a conversation that's continually ongoing. And is, as of present day, something that we as a school don't offer. So like I said, for us, it's just Rocket League and League of Legends. That's I would say our biggest conversation of late, since it's like, a lot of our students do say it's like, if this was Fortnite, we would absolutely do it. And as of now, like we are not offering that.
So how do you I don't want to use the word combat that, but how do you deal with the fact that at home they're playing first shooter games and then they want to compete on a team?
Honestly, it feels a little bit I feel like I'm being a little bit hypocritical and not offering it. Just because it's one that like we're still working to get our administration on board for. Like and everybody's very aware that they're going home and doing that. My hope is that at least by just getting these first two games going and showing kind of the numbers of participation. So it's like, maybe this isn't your choice, but it's like, if all of a sudden now we're entering in 6 Rocket League teams, because there's 4 or 6 like players per team, we can start to push to it, because we can show that there's this level of interest. Or kind of like Kelly had mentioned, whether it's some sort of like part of the registration process is signing a parent waiver. I think for us, it's just like one that I do think I may be wrong in saying this. I think it's inevitable. But I just think as our program grows, that is kind of like our present challenge.
Yeah, and the natural progression is that, you know, they're gonna play in college probably, and college plays those games. And so, you know, if they're playing them at home and the parent signs off on it, I mean, it's not exactly what I would be choosing to have them do, but it is what it is, you know.
We have a question about how diverse are your student gamers, and if you can connect that to what your student population looks like.
I can speak to this. We're a very diverse school, and I would say we probably have more students of color participating than your traditional Caucasian student. So it's more like we have a very diverse community, and I think our teams meet that diversity.
Yeah, we have so we're not incredibly diverse. But what I have noticed is, you know, we have boys and girls that play, and we have some kids that wouldn't have been able to, say, run down a field. You know, there's different things that would hinder them from playing something else, and they can play this, and it's great. In fact, I'm thinking of one student who, you know, he had some limitations actually with his hands, and joined esports, and that became his friend group, you know, and that's what they did. They all played video games.
So can athletes be dual rostered for different games? Can you kind of explain that? Are there seasons that you're working with?
Yeah, you got to go around the seasons because they technically, I think, could be. For us, we let them, but if they're on a sport where they're outside playing, I do always encourage them to go play that. And I'll tell them that we can reschedule a game or whatever. You know, you can't reschedule a soccer game. And, you know, you have 4 years to play varsity soccer, and you might have a little more time with that with esports. So anybody that conflicts, I encourage them to go play the other one. Unless they, I mean, obviously I'd love to have them playing esports. I don't ever tell anyone not to, but when those schedules, we have 3 seasons, you know, like soccer is once a year. So play that, you know, get everything in that you can. That's how I feel.
That's actually kind of another big reason why we wanted to work with Jen. So it's like our students are able to participate on both esports team in that season. They would not be able to participate in an additional athletic team just because of the overlap in practice and game time. But then it allows them to at least get involved independently as well. So it's like that way they could potentially practice on a different, like enter themselves with this organization at a 7 p.m. practice time, and then they're playing their Saturday morning games. So that is definitely like a unique challenge. But for us presently, you can play on both esports teams, but you would not be able to play soccer, volleyball, things like that at that same season.
So if you're a soccer player, you could be on a soccer team roster and also play whatever the current game is also on your campus. And there's no MIA rules because you're both in Massachusetts right now.
Again, we presently couldn't just because of the overlaps in times, but there would be no reason that they would not be able to do that.
We actually haven't had it happen a lot either. I've only had it happen like twice. So.
Okay, any other questions? How do students know about the collegiate opportunities in esports?
Well, I give them information all the time on that stuff. Like I'll email it or I'll post it on one of our, like we have, it's kind of like a message board online.
For us, like I had mentioned, kind of our school is a big college prep piece. So students actually take classes throughout high school called collegiate skills. And so that's where they're able to kind of see the direct translation of different career paths in which they're able to go. And so that's something that starts as early as 6th grade here at our school. And then as juniors and seniors, they're actually in a year-long course. And that's kind of the area in which we provide these different opportunities in which they're able to follow up, because that kind of gives a little bit of the direction of schools in which they're interested in applying, based off majors, things like that. Like I said, we haven't had anyone go towards a sports management field that is interested in esports. It's all been computer science and game design presently. But I do think over the next few years, we'll start to see some overlap in that regard.
Plus, we can get back to field trips on a regular basis if we want to. You know what I mean? Like, we had gone to Becker College, and they'd actually done like an overnight tournament there, and the kids all were dying to go there. And because of that, they had such a positive experience. And of course, then we all know what happened with Becker, but now we're back to, regular. So I'm hoping to connect and do this again. It doesn't have to be an overnight. I didn't go on the overnight, but the kids did the tournament, but like a day trip out and see what the facilities look like, and see, that this is a really great thing,
Now, some of our programs might not have esports collegiate level teams. And so it would be just kind of like the academic program. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's all part of it. They're learning this, right? Like we're showing them how, like, these are all part of a program. You're not going to go out there and, just be the only one working there. There's all these different parts that come together to make this whole field work. And if you know enough about this field, like, let's say if we bring kids out there, everybody, whoever's interested goes, they might learn something that they, didn't know before they went there. You know what I mean? So it's always beneficial to do that.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate, sharing all the great work and the high energy that both of you are. And again, I just think it's valuable for us to understand what you're doing so that we can teach our students what's happening in that particular setting. And you both have model programs, of course, too. So it's great to have that. And then obviously there'll be kind of differences and unique programming at different schools on different campuses. So do you think at the traditional public school level, like, I don't know if you could take a few minutes just to talk about what you're seeing at public school versus at, your school. Kelly's a technical school and Drew, you're a charter school. So what are you seeing, at the public school level?
I speak for ours. So it's like, as a charter school, we are considered a public school, just not your traditional, I would say your traditional kind of public school in that way. I would say it's very much driven by folks like Kelly. Like, if you have a staff member in your building that's motivated, engaged, and wants to create this opportunity, schools are getting that opportunity, and the students are obviously the direct recipients. If you don't, I think it's still very much a newer one. I would use, at least just in our area, Hamilton Wenham is a local program that has done an outstanding job getting that set up. But I think it's very much driven by the staff members at that organization. I'll speak as like an athletic director. If we didn't run into this type of pandemic, I don't know if I would be here presently talking about it. But so I think it's very much driven by the folks that work at each school.
Great.
Yeah, it's interesting too. When I had gone to this seminar with Unity on the West Coast, and I saw all the schools that were part of esports, like it's like a full-on thing there. I mean, it's and it's rolling this way, and it's gonna get here inevitably. But I agree with Drew. It's a lot. I mean, not only do we have like something like the pandemic, which was awesome for us in esports, right? But the budgets are all terrible now too. So like adding more things to it is almost impossible for a lot of schools, So there's a lot of factors involved, but I really do think that it's a matter of us just kind of getting it right. Like figuring it out. Like like you guys like doing this kind of a thing and really getting everything out there and figuring out, all right, how do we build this? And I mean, where do we even start, right? Like we're building a product that's already built, right? The product that we're building is based on a product that we already have. So that's kind of not usually how things go. So it's interesting, it's exciting to be part of when you can kind of see the success. Personally, I love seeing the success of like the socialization for the kids. So when we all went remote, like I like the kids being in there playing together. I like them talking. I like them hanging out. I love the parents coming in and watching. Like that to me is like the best. And hopefully we win. But it's, you know, it's just such a big thing that if we do this right and we take the time and we really build this wonderful, you know, field and, you know, esports leagues that, you know, really bring a lot of light into a lot of good people's lives.
Well, thank you, Kelly and Drew. We really appreciate your energy and your expertise in the high school setting. Appreciate it.